Hello, today I am going to be talking about Black is the Body, Chapter 2. Excuse me. And this one, she's talking about a class that she taught in the fall semester of 2004. And they were reading a book that discussed the N word. And throughout the entire semester, and in the chapter itself, it breaks away from during the semester to other points in time, which I'll get to later. Throughout the entire semester, she's talking about how her class is this is an honors class, and they're talking about the N word, and it's 11 students, and they're all white kids, and she talks about how the word like affects black people, but she really is intrigued to see like if they will say it, if any of the kids will say it. Some of them are very adamant about not saying it. Some of them are less adamant about not saying it, and she talks about if context in saying it is important because the title of the book has the N word in it. Also, I've decided not to say the N word because I'm in like a hotel. I don't want like a bunch of people to like walk by and just like hearing me say it. But otherwise, I would just kind of like rail it because I can, and I think it'd be funny to have like I think white people feel weird when I say it. And I think that's a little funny, but that's besides the point. But we talk about it, or sorry, Emily Bernard talks about it with her students, and within that she also discussed a few other like three other things. One, she goes to hang out with a friend of hers named David, and she talks, and like he's like a poet, and they discuss like his life and his poetry, and he has some for her to read, and she meets his wife who like is from the south, and like she heard it through like a guy driving through a card, but she only read the lips, so she didn't really like hear it. And then she also talks about how she was talking to her boss about how she has to dress more professionally because she's black, but she doesn't remember distinctly saying that her white coworker doesn't. But the boss brings up how she essentially did say that without saying that, and she felt really conflicted by that because she was like, "Well, I didn't say that, she did," which I feel is really interesting to kind of say that because I do agree that like as an African American and as well, I'm multiracial, but still, like I feel like I have to be more presentable because if I'm less presentable, especially in professional settings, then it's seen as disrespectful. But I believe the standard of professionalism should be held the same across the board in a professional setting. And then the third thing she talks about is discussing with her class the use of the N word in 1994 Pulp Fiction by Quentin Tarantino, and how Quentin Tarantino uses the hard R N word in it a bunch of times, and how he kind of like wants to portray himself as the cool white guy who uses the N word. So I really do like that it wasn't in this chapter how she told the story. It wasn't just straight about the fall semester. It was like she talked about the fall semester a bit and then break away to talk about an experience she had and then talk about it again and then break away from the experience she had. I feel like when she adds her own sense of how the N word makes her feel and how being black makes her feel, it really heightens how she actually feels with her students talking about it because she never distinctly says it. Because even in the beginning of the chapter, she says like one of her students asked her how she feels, and Emily Bernard, to us the audience, says that she doesn't like it feels wrong, like she doesn't like hearing it or saying it. But in the class, she is like, it's fine, you can say it if you want, I don't care, because she doesn't want like the students to not say it because her feelings are involved. And I think that's really interesting, even though she separates her professional life from her personal life, which is very difficult when it comes to a subject of this matter. Um, Also in the book, she asked the students, or this chapter, she asked the students if she wasn't there, what she'd be saying. And then there's this one kid who like stands up and is like, "Y'all would all be ripping it, if she wasn't here." And I'm not sure how I feel about this particular student because he seems like he wants to be an ally because he likes like Jay-Z and stuff. Like I like Jay-Z too. Like come on. But at the same time, it feels like he is looking for an excuse to say it, like a way to say it, and kind of trying to justify it, which I think is weird. And we also learned in this chapter, because I don't think she said in the first chapter, that her husband's white and also a professor, which I think will be interesting to talk about later on, especially with having children who are multiracial. I did not know he was white. And they also talked about how her students call her Emily because uh, her, her students call her husband John, and they don't call him like Dr. Giovanni or whatever their last name is. But I do think it's really effective how this chapter, even though it's talking about the N word, everything isn't distinctly about the N word, but also all of it's about the N word at the same time. Like when we talk about how race affects her, like like whenever you talk about race, especially as a black person, from my experience at least, the N word is always something that's in the back of your mind, and you always wonder and you worry, and you feel like someone's gonna say it, because inevitably, like someone's gonna say it to you, and someone's gonna like, like use it against you to dehumanize you, but she doesn't talk about how she's discussing it with her class solely. She talks about these other stories where it's relevant in her day-to-day life, and then it brings it back to the classroom, and we kind of see it being relevant again, which I really think is an effective way to tell the story. So overall, I really did enjoy this chapter. I thought it brought up a lot of great points about like, who can say it, who can't say it, should we still say it, without hitting like the traditional points she talks about in a much nuanced way, which I think is very interesting. Like, does the context matter? Like if you're singing in a song or if it's in the title of a book, like, is it okay to say? And I think she brings up a lot of questions, but she never gives like a direct answer. And I feel like it's up for interpretation. I really like that, and I think she did a phenomenal job in this chapter. So, thanks, and I'll see you in class, Taylor.